Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. And all right, Wire fans, here we go. Uh, I'm doing my favorite season of The Wire, and I'm ranking them in chronological order. So, all the way from season one to season five, I'm ranking them one through five, um, and not in that same order, of course. But which season is the best? The season that has the most replay value, which season has the most excitement, which season has the most drama, which season has the most meaning to it. All of those are considered in my top five. And I will be ranking them in order. And of course, this is difficult to do, but I got to nitpick. But obviously, we know that most people's least favorite season is season two. Now, season two, you learn about the behind the scenes thing about how the product get to the streets and how it gets to Prop Joes and Avons and Stringers and how the product gets to them. So there's a meaning there. So that was a purpose of it. But it's coming off that electric first season. But season two, I'll learn to appreciate it more because of the dialogue and just learning the process. And it gives you a lot of background story. So I don't think it was meant to be desirable. I think it was meant to just give you a background because they expected the show would be around a long time, I believe. But nevertheless, it gave you a different aspect from the streets. I mean, it gave you a little bit of the streets in there, but mostly it was about the dock and about those workers that was on the dock and their lives, which was pretty interesting. I like it more every time I see it, but season two, if I had to nitpick, would be number five and ranked of all of the seasons. But it's definitely a season that's important. And true fans appreciate season four for what it is. And my fourth uh, favorites, least favorite season, or fourth in a hierarchy, I would say is season four, ironically. I felt just I don't like season four as much because I felt bad for the kids having to live in that environment, even though we never had the perspective for it. And it gave us a different perspective in far as the Wire's universe of what the kids go through because we didn't see that in the first three seasons really at all. So we got to meet, Naaman Bryce, who was Weebay's kid, and we got to meet Michael, who was one of my favorite characters in there. And then you get to meet, um, you know, other kids, Randy Wagstaff, and all these other different kids, and how the streets affected them. But I just felt bad about it. And then this season, where Marlo became the biggest villain of the Wire universe, because season three he was already doing that, but it was towards later in the season. But he was just a villain, even all the way to the end of the show. But season four, he was just, with the 22 bodies that were in the um vacants and things like that. So yeah, season four was like my least favorite. And just the way they filmed it looked a little bit weird as far as the cameras and things go. So it definitely is my fourth least favorite behind season two. Um, and then Chris and Snoop made it even worse with their what they were doing, just with everybody, just anybody who looked at them wrong. But I did like the mayor's Carcetti storyline. That was one of the highlights, I think, of season four. It showed the political part of the Wire universe, which we really didn't see as much, except for Mayor Royce and Clay Davis. But that was like the corrupt side of things. Carcetti brought a different light to the political side of it. And number three, my third favorite season is season five. Now, season five was bittersweet because it was the last season, but I felt like I still needed more closure. Like I needed a movie similar to um, the El Camino movie after Breaking Bad. Now, that's the only difference between Breaking Bad and The Wire. Why the Breaking Bad might have a little bit of edge is because they concluded with a movie after they wrapped up the show. Now, if The Wire came out with a movie after the show, I think it would be a huge gap, which I still think that The Wire is better than Breaking Bad, but I still think that they should have made a movie or something because I needed more closure knowing about Slim Charles and Fat Face Rick, what they did with the city after when they got it and Marlo was no longer in the picture. I still wanted to see that, but um, them being able to solve that 22 murder scandal was huge. I like that at the end, so I wanted to see how life would look for things after that because Michael became the new Omar, and Marlo was out of the picture, and Chris Parlow had to do life for the murders that he did. So that was the highlight. But then losing Omar and Prop Joe in that season, it was that's how I knew the show was pretty much over after that. Because if you lose Omar, especially, he was a staple from season one all the way to season five. But Prop Joe as well. He was the only, I believe, Prop Joe was the only kingpin to live all five seasons or to be in all five seasons because Avon wasn't in season four. So he was the only person to do that. But yeah, the only thing that they needed to do was make that conclusion movie like El Camino did for Breaking Bad. That's the only gripe I have about The Wire in its entirety, really. My second favorite season of The Wire is season one. Now, season one had a lot of foundational parts. It was kind of slower. You were trying to learn names. It was very fast paced, and I was still trying to get names. So I had to watch it a couple of times back when I used to watch it frequently. But it was a vital part of the show. It introduced a lot of characters, younger characters like Poot and Bodie, Michael B. Jordan character, Wallace, which, he looks totally different now. But a lot of those characters didn't get a lot of love, like Bird, who was a short-lived character, but his actions started everything after, unaliving one of the witnesses and things like that. So he kind of started everything, and Stinkum and all these other characters that I like starting off were all in season one, but they didn't get any, they weren't in any more seasons. I think Bird was in season two just because of his court date, but other than that, he wasn't in any more shows. But um the clever dialogue is what makes the show great. And like it really had a meaning to it. It wasn't just about the streets and gangster stuff. It was about how they felt and how it played into reality. The classic chess scene where they're playing uh checkers on a chessboard, and um what is his name? Um D'Angelo telling them how to play chess, but relating it to terms of what they knew from the streets. Classic moment. Even D'Angelo telling him about the McDonald's, and the guy was like, "Man, whoever made these nuggets is rich." And he telling them, "Well, no, he's probably not rich. It's probably some guy made the idea, somebody stole it, and they went along with it, and he never got paid for it." And they're like, "How is that fair?" And it was like, "This life ain't got to be fair." So it was classic moments and stories that you can always take behind, because when you look at them now, you see it in live action from all the different lawsuits and people go through. And this show was definitely ahead of its time. If it was out now, I think it'd be 10 times bigger. Pause. But I do love that season one. It's my second favorite season just because of the dialogue and the tone that it set, and just the meaning behind everything, and just how intricate it was. Now that leads to my favorite season, which is season three. Now, I think this is most people's favorite season because everything about this season was great, except for the death of Stringer. But Stringer was kind of getting too full of himself, I want to say, pause. But this season had everything else. It had the free zones and Bunny Colvin, which was a crazy concept to think about. But if somebody thought about the story, maybe it was true somewhere in the world, but we don't know about. But um, it just brought that element. And it even had the Carcetti introduction to him trying to solve the broken city, so to speak, and him trying to actually come up with a solution, but it's kickstarted his political career. You had the introduction of Cuddy, who was this guy who spent, I think 15 years in prison for unaliving someone and getting out and trying to acclimate to society and trying to figure things out, which eventually leads him to being an advocate for kids and having a boxing gym and just being a pillar of the community, totally doing a 180 or a 360, they call it. So it was just an inspiring story. In this, you had Bubbles trying to get clean and trying to figure his life out. His friend being unalive, due to being in the free zones and just using so much. So you had so many different things going on, and Omar being on a hunt still for Stringer after, almost getting set up for his tragic ending almost at that time. Then you had Avon getting out of the streets at this time and setting the streets on fire after the Marlowe incident. So you had so many things different going on, and this definitely has to be the best season because even Stringer and Avon had a beef going on, and it ultimately led to Stringer's demise. But the feud between Marlowe and Avon was classic. It was one of the biggest villainous that you can have. Forget what Marvel's talking about. Avon and Marlo was, streets was only so big, and they had to bump into each other, pause, but they had this feud going on, and it was just everything on the show. But that's the best season because just of the multiple storylines, angles, and characters, and not to mention Brother Muson, which is one of my favorite characters, was in season three. I mean, he was introduced in season two, but in season three, he set the tone. The classic scene between Brother Muzon and Omar is still one of my favorite matchups ever because just their styles. They're so clever in their dialogue and they're so intricate and they're so thought out. They're the smartest characters on the show, in my opinion. Two of the smartest characters, at least. But nevertheless, definitely season three is my favorite season. Tell me what you think your favorite seasons of The Wire are, and until next time, I'll see you next time.